The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it, Mondays here. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. It is camp season. Huskers got it going this morning. Plenty of thoughts and reaction. We'll hear from Coach Matt Rhule. It also whiteout Billy Kemp in hour two. We'll spend some time with Mr. Blackshirt Charlie McBride. A Monday with Charlie. Jay Moore joins the show, as it is the Black Shirt Hour to get you going. Numbers to get in and dial us up can do so at 489-1240, 489-1240, or toll-free across the state where you hear us, 1-800-825-5865. Can email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com, and always make your comments on the stream with the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Can comment that way. Also on Hail Varsity Twitter at HVarsity Radio, Facebook and Twitter also with KFOR. So those are your outlets to say what's up. We say hello, and I have got to give a 9.5 out of 10 to Elijah Herbel for his beef short ribs that he made, and he left a little bit over for me and Dolman, as we absolutely were the two old guys crashing the party to watch Bud Crawford absolutely dismantle Spence. My God, that was Nebraska all over Florida in the Fiesta Bowl. We'll get to some boxing thoughts, but well done. You didn't have an apron, you didn't have a chef hat, but you should.
Yeah,
that was good.
It was good having you over to the bachelor house. It's a house full of bachelors.
I walk in, there's your pup on the couch, there's artwork everywhere, really cool artwork, and then there's dudes drinking whatever. I mean, their selection of beer. There was some Coors Original that the Bandit brought by.
Yep.
Some IPAs.
We had about everything you could have asked for.
I know, and it was very nice of you to not say no.
Why would I?
It's the old guys at the rail again.
There was no problem with that. We all had fun.
What was sweet, though, is you're letting me and Dolman pay in installments. No one else had to pay, but the two old guys get to the door. That'll be $75.99. We take cash, check, or money order, and in true form or fashion, give me a little bit before that check clears, Elijah.
Well, the best part is as I was going through and purchasing the fight, I didn't tell you this on Saturday night, I learned that the card on file for the Showtime account was my dad's.
Oh, so Dad got popped.
Dad got popped, and I got to figure out how I'm going to pay him back, if I'm going to pay him back. To his credit, you need send him a confirmation text, be like, do you want to purchase this? Before I even texted him, he confirmed it for me. So thanks, Dad. Appreciate you. I promise I'll pay you back eventually.
I have left that promise dangling. Hey, I need to order something on Amazon. Dear, it's your account. I will Venmo you. Thankfully, she does not listen.
How about Bud Crawford, though?
Awesome. Just incredible. He's had a lot of big moments. He's had a lot of big fights, but he was able to etch his name, deservedly so, in history with the unification. Mm-hmm. And it's not just that he tore up this guy that was supposed to really challenge him, but it wasn't fair. It was not fair. It was absolutely a savage beating. And it just goes to show what Bud Crawford's all about with his brilliance, his intelligence, and his power and ability. But you have a guy that is that thoughtful when it comes to an attack plan and how he's a quick thinker and he computes. And after round one, it was over. I mean, Spence came out, you feel him out, and then Crawford's counterpunching was masterful. His power punches were where they were at percentage-wise. I think 60%. He just mauled the guy with his jab, and he took away Spence's jab, and it was really cool to see. The state of Nebraska's all over Bud, the proud city of Omaha, and he's an absolute phenom and a guy that this state is super proud of, and it was really cool to see him do his thing.
Yeah, and as you said, kind of that knockdown in the second round, it was one of the only fights of that magnitude where from that early on in the fight, it's over. It's over. The only fear was if Spence catches him with something, but even whenever Bud got
blocked
hit,
him.
It never looked like it was going to put him down. Bud always looked like he had the advantage in speed, power, and before the fight, people were saying, well, Spence is going to be the bigger man. And I said it in the first round. I said, Bud looks just as big as Errol Spence in that ring, and it was great to see.
I mean, you see poor Spence's eyes were just getting peppered.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's common in boxing, but, I mean, every time he went to the ring after a round, I mean, there was more puffiness, more redness, and the guy was in trouble from the get-go. So there's our commentary on Bud Crawford.
One last thought. Trev Alberts, if you're listening, I've tweeted at you before. You've never responded.
You know why? It's a damn Herbel kid again.
All I'll say, Trev, is if you're out there listening, make it happen. Bud Crawford in Memorial Stadium. Get that walkout through the tunnel. There's going to be the brand new tunnel that you're going to be able to show off here in a couple of months. Bud Crawford in the stadium. I don't care who he's fighting. I don't think Nebraska cares who he's fighting. Make it happen in the stadium. 90,000 will show up. 90,000 will have fun. And 90,000 will watch Bud Crawford get a win. That's all I'm saying.
Maybe the rematch. I don't know that you can't do it in Vegas contractually. But if Bud could land whoever, warm-up fight, post-fight, after the rematch, whatever it is, yeah, that'd be incredible. We were blessed to have him at PBA. Mm-hmm. Was that 6 years ago? 2017-ish?
Yeah, it was fall 2017.
Yeah, it was August. It was hot. Junior got to go, and we were able to dirty media passes. That was really cool, and hey, good for Bud Crawford. Let's talk some Nebraska football as Coach Rhule met the media today. And day one of camp, and you had things a little different in a good way. As camp was split up, you had older players, and then you had younger players, and you had younger guys getting a minimum of 40 reps, and you had younger guys that had some extra time for the teaching aspect, but a very important plan. And Coach Rhule talked about that. But Rhule gets us started off. We'll hear from Coach right now as he addressed the Bob Wager situation. That's how he led things off this afternoon.
Really grateful for him for the time he spent here. Unfortunate situation. I know he took responsibility for it, and I appreciate him for doing that. Not a lot of men would have handled it the way he did. I don't judge people by their tough moments or worst moments. I always judge them how they respond. I really appreciate him, and I'm thankful for him. I mean, it was a short time, but he brought some recruits here. He brought some of his kids here, so I appreciate him and wish him and his family the best.
So you had comments from Rhule on Coach Wager, and really that is about all you can say. You wish him well. We've touched on it on Friday's show as that news broke, and then also on the Saturday morning edition. But let's hear about Josh Martin getting called up, stepping up to that tight end position he's very familiar with.
When we first hired Josh, I remember one of the analytics companies, sending me signing like, hey, great hire, and all the things he had done. And we've just been nothing but impressed with Josh since then. We've had Christian Ellsworth in that room, and Christian's a really talented young coach. So it's kind of been a blessing to have him in there. But Josh has done it. He's done it 2 places. He's had guys go on to the NFL, and I went out and watched his Indy today with the young guys, and you can tell he's been coaching a long time. So. Our whole plan and kind of building the staff, a little differently than maybe it's been done here before, was having a bunch of guys waiting in the wings. So as guys have opportunities and move on, or unfortunately in a situation like this, we have guys here. We don't have to go out and hire someone new. We can go out and hire guys within the organization that that know our systems and understand our way of life.
That's huge. That is thinking about third down on first down, to put it into play calling terms, and that is. Quite honestly, Saban-esque. How many times did Saban hire a guy to be an analyst, be it a Lane Kiffin or a Sark, only to have someone leave the nest for another head coaching job after the rehab was done under Saban, Bill O'Brien? And then what? then you next man up, just like you hear coaches say when there's injuries. Well, next man up's got to happen. Well, that's okay to have on your coaching staff. And if you're smart enough with how you're spending your budget from a support system standpoint, you're going to have guys. I mean, not many programs have a guy who spent 7 years at SMU and at Arizona State with a guy who's put people into the NFL at tight end. So Nebraska ahead of the game there, and Coach Rhule laid it out perfectly. But you just have to have, again, details, Elijah. This is how I want to build our coaching roster and our analyst roster, and then that support system and support staff that helps the football program go.
And as you said, to put it in the play calling terms, it's having your third down play call ready to go on first down. And you know what? If your plan gets derailed, you have the backup option as well. It's knowing the future, because it's rare in college football as a whole, but especially in modern college football, to have what Nebraska had in the late 80s and 90s with continuity with your assistant coaches, where we've talked with plenty of them on this show. Guys like Charlie McBride, guys like George Darlington, guys like Ron Brown, guys like Milt Tinniper, guys that stuck and stayed at Nebraska. That's rare in modern college football. You have to expect guys, you know what? Offense has a great year. Your OC is going to go off and take a head coaching job somewhere, because at the end of the day, the dollars in college football are massive right now. Whenever you see that multi-million-dollar contract put in front of you, say, you know what? It's time for you to make the jump. I love my time at Nebraska, but that's just the standard in college football nowadays, and it's Matt Rhule looking to the future saying, I'm going to be ready when that happens.
Well, you're going to get the best candidates, not only guys that you've coached with, but you're going to get guys that want to absolutely leave it out there for you, because you're going to make them better. The development part isn't just on the field, but Coach Rhule likes hiring young and developing. And you'll get a great reputation. You do the job to his liking, you're going to get an opportunity, presumably. And Rhule's had his coordinators get head coaching job opportunities at some of the previous stops. Mm-hmm. Or they move on, or they end up in the NFL with him. So, no, you're going to get, with the expectation being, we want you to reach your dream. If your dream's to be an OC, if your dream's to be a head coach, awesome. We'll help you get there. No hard feelings, but give us your all when you're here. So we'll dive into Miles Farmer here and the update here from Coach Rhule on Farmer, and we'll talk a little bit here about, what is next for Farmer, what's next for Nebraska in the safety spot, who are some of the names that we need to think about in case Miles isn't back. Here is Coach Rhule.
Miles was suspended to end the summer by us, just for simple things, nothing major, just sort of some of our standards, and was not a member of the 120. So we'll wait and see how that all plays out.
More on Farmer, if he'll return or not, from Coach Rhule.
I don't know. It's just kind of day by day. Like I said, I love Miles. He's a competitive kid. It's so hard when you have a new coach, right? And they have different standards than you're used to. So I get that, right? We've been patient with a lot of guys, We'll see what happens with Miles, right? We'll see what happens, and we'll see. Like I said, the ball's in his court. I mean, I'd love him to be here, but whatever he wants to do, I respect him as a man. So whatever he decides, I understand.
That's a very, I don't want to say politically correct. That's an answer to not put it on the kid, but understand that there's standards you got to meet to be here. And Elijah, Miles Farmer's a guy that I was going to use ink at that one of those safety spots because of his experience at Nebraska, his ability at Nebraska, even from a young ball player. He was one of those guys that was forcing or getting turnovers, be it forced fumbles or interceptions. Kid out of Atlanta that super talented, and just the body type is something you want on that back end in run support, but also when it comes to coverage. So he's not easily replaceable. We've got some names we'll get into that that Nebraska will have. Are you going to get the same or better production, assuming Farmer doesn't come back?
Well, luckily Nebraska has a guy who I don't want to call him like for like, because Miles Farmer is unique athletically in what he brings to the field. His frame, he's got one of those NFL-type bodies. But you have a guy, a transfer in Corey Collier.
Yeah, from Florida.
he's flown a little bit under the radar because you were expecting Miles to step into that starting role. I mean, Miles is one of the reasons why guys like Phil Steele had Nebraska's secondary being the strength of its defense next year. All the returning talent you had with Newsome and with Miles Farmer, and then two guys that are coming back from injury, but you expect them to get some action this year, and Malcolm Hartzog and Marquise Buford. With that four, that's an experienced defensive backroom that you expect are going to lead that defense. Now, you have question marks with that other safety spot. And Cord Collier's a guy, 6'1", almost 200 pounds. He's athletically a little bit unique in that back end as well. So you have that, but is he going to be ready to transfer in? Is he going to be ready for big-time Big Ten football? Omar Brown's a little bit undersized at that safety position after moving from cornerback. Is he going to be the guy that steps up and fills that role? I mean, you have a guy in Phelan Sanford, the former walk-on from, I believe, Binkelman, Nebraska. Is he going to be able to step up and fill that role? He's been a special teams guy.
You have a gift back there?
You have a couple options, and I don't know if you want to make a position switch this close to the season, but it's a blow, but I don't think it's a blow that Nebraska is not going to be able to overcome with some of the talent in that room.
Some of the names we'll get into. Elijah laid out a few folks that are candidates. You hope Farmer comes back, but you really like what you had with Farmer and Buford.
Yeah.
And I know Buford's coming back, and Hartzog, Oppo, Newsome's a nice potential there, but we'll see. Again, a strength that now has some uncertainty. More from Coach Rhule, Billy Kemp, as we're rolling here day one of camp. It's Hail Varsity, and we're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We're talking day one of fall camp. More comments from Matt Rhule on dorm life. I should have asked him whether or not he has a lava lamp, because that is standard for said dorm, standard for your room once you get to those teen years. At least it was for this old guy. And you brought it from your home bedroom to your dorm room. I think I had a little red and purple combo going on, and then somehow it got broke in the move. I still think the wife thought it was the ugliest thing among many ugly things in my room.
I'm trying to think back to some of the dorm room essentials, because I never lived.
You didn't want to have your comforter too close to said.
Yeah, because I think back, there was always
lava lamp because they're a little hot.
There was always the elevated bed with the couch underneath.
Yeah, we had the freestanding loft.
Yeah, and then on the other side, then you have your roommate with their bed elevated underneath that, a TV stand with a TV and a PlayStation or Xbox, whatever your game of choice is. That's a classic dorm room essentially. Obviously, you have to have the mini fridge, an entire pallet of ramen in there for whenever you want it. There's some good essentials for the dorm room.
Well, one of the essentials was the sock or tie on the door handle, and one of us may have wandered in when roommate Jeremy from Sioux Falls had a female friend in there.
Just expose him, dang.
Well, it's all right. I haven't talked to him in 30 years, so. But you kind of look and see that there's some clothed wrestling going on, and then you see who he's wrestling with, and you just don't do it. you just gotta look out.
Do it. Tell us how you really feel, Schmitty. Oh, dorm life.
Yep, there we go. Let's spend a little bit more time on football and Nebraska.
Please,
Can we get back to it? I think he was trying to escape. But it was too long a drop with those lofts we had. There's no beds below as we put our fridge and our couch and everything. So
she had him in a chokehold.
She could arm wrestle him and beat him.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay. I'm getting the mental picture now, even though I'd rather not.
Cute gal. I'll say that. Moving forward. Farmer. Okay, so you've got Omar Brown. He's a guy that transferred in, didn't see a ton of action. Northern Iowa. He's been working at safety. He's been working at nickel. There's been the cross training that's gone on. So we'll see if this opening and who knows, maybe with spring ball, you were going to see more Omar Brown anyway. You have Deshaun Singleton, high-profile dude. I believe he was a JUCO. Does that sound right?
Yep.
So he's a little more seasoned. in the JUCO ranks. Javier Morton is a body type that's good. But I like your take on Collier, a guy that saw a lot of time on special teams at Florida, but not as much in-game action at safety. So they have some options. Taman Lynham is the one holdover from Florida from back in the day. I mean, Lynham's been here 400 years, bless his heart, and he's continued to stick it out. I don't know if Kobe Bretz, I loved him at Westside, if he's more of a kind of a hybrid backer option. Same with Gifford, obviously. You have Dwight Boodle. And then what we don't know is what's how soon's the availability of both Buford and Hartzog. Hartzog is somebody that's just a good football player, lining him up opposite Newsome. Then there's, the Buford factor. I mean, that was a 1-2 punch that you were excited about if you're Nebraska. You hope things, if you're a Nebraska fan, turn around for Farmer and things get taken care of, because he's an experienced asset. You want playing in Big Ten football. You want in an opener against Minnesota.
But the place my mind goes to is how different this feels than the situation with Anthony Grant to start spring football. With Anthony Grant in spring football, he's got some things he
was still at practice.
He was still in practice. We're excited to have him back if he can get those things in order. This feels different with Matt Rhule saying the ball's in Miles' court whether or not he wants to return.
Sure.
Doesn't feel like the coaching staff, at least reading in between the lines and reading the tea leaves, no inside information, it doesn't sound to me like the coaching staff is operating as if Miles Farmer is going to be back, that's how it felt with Anthony Grant, with him being at practice, with how
door
that
was wide open.
Yes, it felt like they were expecting him to be back, but if he wasn't, they were going to handle that. This feels the opposite. This feels like a case of we're expecting him to not be back, and we're going to operate in that way until we hear otherwise. So that's why the first place my mind goes is to Corey Collier with how high profile of a transfer he was, one of the first guys that Nebraska and the coaching staff brought in, along with Chief Borders from that Florida group. And he was a guy that was high profile out of high school, coming from the Miami area, picked
4.5, 5-star recruit, something like that.
Yeah, it was like all Florida and one of the top kids in Miami, which is a recruiting hotbed every single year. Had offers from the likes of Georgia, Clemson, Tennessee.
So the talent's there.
The newly led Brian Kelly LSU Tigers coming out of high school. I mean, Miami offered him, as you'd expect that they would, for being a Miami kid, but high-profile kid, redshirted his freshman year at Florida and got some action, but you kind of get those freshman knocks out of the way and you're expecting a guy to take a big leap in year two. That's why he's the first place my mind goes to whenever you look at that depth chart. I don't want to discount Omar Brown, because he's a guy that was FCS All-American at Northern Iowa. Nebraska's coaching staff sounded really excited about him last year, but didn't see the field as much as you would have thought from him last year. Whenever he was on the field, he didn't quite flash like a guy that athletically does in Corey Collier. First place my mind goes, I think Nebraska feels all right about what they have back there. Obviously, you'd like to have Farmer back, but you know what? If that opens the door for some younger guys getting some playing time, I don't think Coach Matt Rhule and his staff are opposed to that. That's what their calling card has been for years and years in the college ranks.
They'll get him ready. That's the plan anyway. A little bit more from Coach Rhule. A rundown here. Let's hear about Josh Fleeks, his situation, and then we'll hear on Jacob Hood and Brody Tagaloa. All three of these updates here from Rhule earlier today.
Josh Fleeks reported yesterday and was significantly over his weight, so he was sent home to make his weight. So we'll wait and see how Josh does.
That, I don't hear a lot about wideouts and weight. Do you?
No.
I don't ever. Like, those guys are always skinny for a lot of their life. So there's that. So, okay, duly noted. Come in shape and at your playing weight. Jacob Hood, this is a guy that transferred from Georgia.
Absolutely massive.
Yeah, monster of a man. And it sounds like he is working through some health issues when it comes to his ankles.
Jacob Hood, Jacob's just dealing with some chronic ankle stuff. So, he's kind of a little bit more in just sort of rehab mode right now. That's why he wasn't there last night. He was meeting with the doctors.
And this is pretty jarring about Tagaloa with what happened with him. He's a guy that made the switch from tight end to rush end, and somebody that really burst pretty well in that spring game.
Brody Tagaloa. Unfortunately, Brody was in a traffic incident, a car accident, a single car accident, maybe about a week ago, a couple weeks ago. He's home in California with his family, recuperating. I FaceTimed him last night, and so he's had a cut to his face, had to have surgery on his knee. We expect him to miss the year, unfortunately. Brody was coming along great, but he's got a bright future, and good things will happen for Brody.
So that sucks. Car accident, and you got some recovery with Tagaloa, and Nebraska going to keep him in their thoughts for sure and get him back.
But I think whenever you hear a car accident where it's a potential head injury, the guy's face gets cut up, he has to have surgery on his knee, that's a damn serious car accident.
Bad.
And I think from an outside point of view, not knowing the ins and outs of the details, you're thankful that wasn't more serious.
Sure. Well, and Chamber chimes in here. What constitutes significant weight for a wideout? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 20? I would say probably that 15 to 20 pound window, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm. Well, significant is where you have to read in between the lines there. Significantly overweight.
So, and I am significantly overweight, but thankfully Elijah's not locked the door on me.
Thankfully you're not a wide receiver.
No, that would be problematic. So Rhule lays out just overall his thoughts on day one as Nebraska was able to put some pretty good work in.
I was really calm and peaceful today. Like I really felt a sense of just calm. Like for my day one of coaching a team in fall camp. It's my 4th time being a head coach and having to be day one. These guys are just way further along than they just understand what we're asking them to do, and the staff has done a great job. Susan's worked every day this summer to get them. And Garrett McGuire didn't go on vacation; he stayed every day this summer. So, they're just the team's so much further along in terms of understanding what we're asking that it just made me. I'm not out there having to be a maniac making sure every drill's they understand where it's supposed to be. So I have to give a lot of credit to the players. I mean, they really worked this summer. And I'll say one thing. I think Billy spoke today, Billy Kemp. He's an edgy, tough, feisty dude. Someone wants to jump me, and I see Billy. I'm saying, hey, Billy, will you help me out? He's a guy I'm taking into a dark alley with me. But I watch him out there with the players in the summer, and I watch him coach those guys he's always pulling a guy over and saying, hey, let me talk. So our young players are pretty much further along because of the culture of our older players here, and I really appreciate that.
I think Nebraska in this portal, when we talk about who is added, I think they got some guys. I think they got some guys that are confident, and there's always a story with a transfer. There's always a story with the portal, and you look at a guy like Billy Kemp. We'll hear some from Kemp here in about 5 minutes. He's a guy that just wants to win. Sims is a guy that just wants to come in and win. Those are two of your leaders on offense that are going to put the work in. They expect everyone else to do it, but once you see them doing it, and Sims said as much to us last week in Indy, that he wants to win. He's going to put the work in. He's going to hold you to a certain expectation, but it's not like he's do as I say, not as I do. And that really hits well with teammates. You've got mature guys on this football team. They just haven't been wearing that red end for very long. That's a difference. And if it holds true and they get some breaks and they kind of round into form, that's why it's okay for you to be optimistic beyond this 6-6 number or this 5-7 or this 4-8 that you've seen in the past. Because if you got the right makeup, Elijah, don't kid yourself. There's been an emphasis put on chemistry, from who's rooming with who in the dorms, the emphasis of put your phone down, let's play some cards, let's get more FaceTime, not in the iPhone standpoint, and let's really get you connected with a teammate and then get you coached up, whether you're young or you're old. And the work's been put in. We'll hear from Kemp and some of that off-season work he's done. Thoughts on the Big Ten expanding. Hail Varsity continues. Coach McBride's about 30 minutes away.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. It's Hail Varsity Radio with you on a Monday. We're presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel can send some emails. Chris@hailvarsity.com is where you go. You have Brennan chiming in, a friend from the Black Hills. Good to hear and see you, Brennan. Bummed about Farmer. It seems like we see this every year. There's always a surprise maybe to us when it comes to what we think the roster / too deep could be and what it is, be it injury or departure or what have you. We'll see if things shake out differently from what we're at now, day one of camp, to maybe that first week leading up to Minnesota. 2 weeks of dorm life, Elijah will get things fine-tuned.
And to Brennan's point, that's just kind of life in two facets. One, it's life in football in that, you know what, things happen on a football field, whether it be injuries or what have you. And then it's also life with 18 to 22-year-olds. We've talked with a lot of people about, you know what, you're looking at a 16, 17-year-old kid trying to predict development. It's hard to do. Sometimes you're going to have a kid that absolutely soars to the top of the depth chart from being a walk-on or from being a low 3-star because, you know what, he's developed this offseason in a way that you didn't expect because you hit that age of 18 to 22 and things get a little bit hard to predict. And then also that same vein, 18 to 22-year-olds, kids have a lot of things going on in their lives, 18 to 22.
It's a maturity thing. It's what's important to you.
Yeah. Your priorities change. Your maturity changes. Sometimes people just decide, you know what, football isn't for me. You know what, the amount of dedication we have to put in this summer, it's not for me. I see my friends out there who are living normal lives, and I'm being dedicated to a thing that I loved when I was 16, but now that I turned 21 years old, it's not what I love anymore. There's things change in life, and when Brendan says, you know what, it seems like we see this every single year. Yeah, we do, because that's life whenever you're dealing with kids like this.
Well, and Farmer's an elder statesman. One guy that we just touched on his maturity and his talent, but he could be a monster get for Nebraska, not just because of what he can do on the field, but what he also does in that meeting room, is Billy Kemp. And Kemp's a guy that is very talented, and you're really appreciative if you're a Nebraska fan to get him and see what he can do in this wide receiver room. But he is a twofold win. If he breaks loose on the field, possession-wise or just yards after catch, that's big for this passing offense. Also, knowing what buttons to push and the lead by example, high standard guy, where no one's going to, you just heard Rhule talk about, guess who's coming with me in a dark alley? It's Billy Kemp, because he's going to have my back and we're going to win that Donnybrook. But Kemp was asked about his early objectives. What's he want to get done this camp here in Lincoln?
Prove to the team and to the coaches that I'm there whenever they need me, doing whatever they need me to do. And, you know, just working hard, attacking every day, trying to get 1% better. And I feel like that's what we have been doing so far.
Kemp's other early objective to pull the power cord on that jackhammer.
Was that jack? I thought it was an air compressor.
Whatever it was, it was loud. More from Kemp here on his role in the offense.
I want my role to be whatever the offense needs, you know, whether that's running routes, coming out the backfield, blocking, whatever you need me to do, I'm here.
So does he want to catch 12 balls a game? Sure. Is he good with the win above all? That's what he is to me. That's what he's absolutely. There's no diva. There's no entitlement. There's just work. And I'm going to push everyone else to be that way. So chemistry's big. We've hit on it a lot. And he was asked about his chemistry with Sims, how that's gone and how it continues to grow.
Yes, sir. I feel like the whole room does. The whole receiver room does. And, you know, the summer was big for us coming into this fall camp, doing 7-on-7 and just having throwing sessions. So I feel like the chemistry within the room has definitely grown. So look forward to building on that during this fall camp.
Elijah, he made it a point, too, to get in early, as him and Sims were both transfer students. And Kemp went into a little more detail about that early chemistry with Sims.
I think it just comes from the way we both work. We just put the work in to ultimately get to where we need to be. If we weren't there the first day, we were going to work to get there closer to it the second day, the third day, the fourth day. So, that's just been our process, just working together and knowing what we have to attack in front of the season. So, just trying to accomplish our goals we have set for.
We'll have a little bit more from Kemp here before the end of hour one, but there's a lot of sincerity just standing near him when he's answering those questions. He's taken the questions from the media, and Elijah, pretty much a no-nonsense guy.
Yeah, that's exactly how I describe his media session this morning. The one comment out there that I think is, it hits a little different whenever you hear the rest of the media session. In a one-off quote that people throw up on Twitter, people throw on a radio show or what have you, it's a little bit out there. Maybe we'll get there. But it was him when he talked about the offensive potential this year. And I think it has to be taken into context with how he describes the rest of that media session. As you said, he's no nonsense. He's not a guy who's going to get up there and be big for the media, try to build his own personal brand.
He's not making promises.
He's not making promises. I think he's very real when he gets up there, and what you hear is his true thoughts and beliefs. It's not anything that's played up just because you're standing in front of 35 different media members. But he gets into, I think this offense has the potential to be one of the best in the country. And whenever he says it, you go, you know what? After hearing the entire media session, I believe that's truly what you think.
Well, it is. Let's hear Kemp talk about where he thinks the offense can go.
I feel like we can be the best offense in the nation. Honestly, we have weapons and we have everything we need. We have the coaches, we have the players. It's just on us to put it together.
He gave you the why. He sees the talent. He goes against the talent. He works with the talent. And above all, he knows the work that's gone in. He's been there at ground zero with the work, and it's all good for him to make that. He's not projecting. He's not declaring. He's not guaranteeing. He's asked a point-blank question about, what kind of offense, because we all want to know. Is it going to be somehow you squeeze out 21 points in Big Ten play, or can you get closer to that 30 number? What type of balance are you going to have? Are you going to be, let's throw a deep ball on 3rd and 12 because that's what can work like last year? Or are you going to be able to establish a run game and then throw when you want to? Can you run when you want to? Can you run when you have to?
Well, you've seen Nebraska's offense be great in recent years, and you can point to the offensive line and some of the faults there last year as why they seemingly took a step back. But there was a hell of a lot of talent on that offense last year, and a hell of a lot of talent that came back. I mean, look at, you have Billy Kemp, a guy that we saw flash in the spring game. Xavier Betts, we've seen flash through the years. Jeff Sims flashed at Georgia Tech with his running and throwing ability. At the tight end room, you have two of the most highly touted tight end prospects over the past 5 years in college football, and Eric Gilbert and Thomas Fidone. The offensive line, they're bullish on what they can be this year. That remains to be seen. But you look across that offense, and you know what? There is talent there. Can they clean up self-inflicted mistakes? Can they clean up pre-snap penalties? Can they clean up drop passes? Can you clean up a running back going outside whenever he should be staying inside and getting your 3 yards? There's little things you need to clean up, but there's potential within that offense. I believe what he says.
Judd chimes in the stream as well. Kemp seems like to be a dog. Love his attitude. Judd also comments on Farmer. Isn't surprising to Judd. DUI last year, 4-game suspension. So you have Farmer that we're wondering if he gets back. And Kemp, the right attitude for sure. We'll wind down hour one next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
About 10 minutes away, Mr. Blackshirt Charlie McBride will join us on Monday with Charlie, get Coach's take on Nebraska football as camp is underway. Jay Moore, Big Red wrap-up. He'll be with us in hour two as well. Reminder about buckling up. 1 of every 3 fatal crashes in Nebraska involves an alcohol-impaired driver. Why take chances? If you drink, don't drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Lots of thoughts from Coach Rhule. Some info from Billy Kemp. We'll get some of Coach McBride's take on Big Ten expansion. We meant to get there a little bit sooner. Let's talk real quick. Good stuff. Billy D sent this to us last night. Bill Dolman from Athlon, and Washington and Oregon were not shocked by their name associated with the Big Ten. Clemson and Florida State, you wondered if and where the Big Ten would expand along the southeastern part of the United States. And I say don't stop with Clemson and Florida State. I think there'll be problems as in roadblocks from South Carolina and the University of Florida. to have another Florida school and another school from South Carolina join the SEC. They play each other anyway every year, all right, the whole in-state rivalry thing. So the Big Ten could come calling. You've got Clemson and Florida State whining loudly about all they've done for the league, more so Clemson, and they're not paid appropriately. They hate the idea of revenue sharing. Now, they would get in line for revenue sharing if it's the Big Ten payday. Now, I don't know what adding 4 more teams would do to each team's take-home. You've already signed your deal, but that triple header would be pretty awesome. It's going to be awesome anyway. But you add those 4 schools, get those 4. Does that push Notre Dame, Elijah? If the ACC's really a league that they played part-time anyway, and you have no Clemson or Florida State win opportunity for strength of schedule, Notre Dame's fine. Their schedule strength's really good anyway. But do they get forced into a Big Ten, and then do you go pick up North Carolina?
That was the name I was going to go to, is North Carolina, because they have been putting more resources into their football program within the past decade or so. And you combine that with what they'd bring to the basketball court. And I know basketball isn't what pays the bills anymore in college sports. It is football, but they're good enough at football. I think they'd raise your level of basketball. Would they leave without Duke because of the importance of that rivalry? I think you can go non-conference all on Nebraska Creighton every single year in basketball.
Duke and Carolina and NC State, they can play one another every year in basketball. They can carve that out. It doesn't have to be twice a year in league play or a third time in the ACC title game. You've had the ACC get rated anyway, and it's been a situation where go get me North Carolina. You've got that Jordan Brand and Ty. I'm okay if you don't get Florida State. I think Miami could work. Mm-hmm. But Florida State's kind of more on the ascension. Cutter chimes in, and Cutter, we'll talk to Coach McBride. He knows both spots well about the offensive and defensive line the next 4 weeks. Cutter nails it.
Yeah.
That is going to be the key to the winning season. What do you get from your defensive line, your offensive line? I know Ty Robinson spoke earlier today as well. We'll try and get some of that for tomorrow. But Coach McBride is next. Jay Moore on the way. Hour 2 coming up. It's Hail Varsity, and we're presented by Currency.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you, it's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. We're efforting Coach McBride. We'll see how things work out there. Hoping to hear from Mr. Blackshirt himself, Charlie McBride, on a Monday. And then Jay Moore with us here at 525. 489-1240. 489-1240. The numbers to get in. And can also email the show, Chris at hailvarsity.com. So that's where we're at with this. It's day 1 of camp and all sorts of excitement for Nebraska football. Good stuff as we brought it back from Indianapolis. And there's a lot of things to look at. You have some comparisons being made by a national talking head about Matt Rhule in the Brian Kelly mold. And listen, you can say and think a lot of things about Brian Kelly, but the guy can coach, and he wins, and he did well at Notre Dame, and he made the jump to LSU, and man, they did it well in year 1. So if Matt Rhule's another version of Brian Kelly, I am good with that because he develops talent and he wins. And guys who win at Cincinnati tend to do well at their next spots.
And let me just say, this came from Josh Pate, who does The Late Kick. If you don't know much about him, I really enjoy his podcast. And
pretty measured.
I'm not going to tell you to listen to him before you listen to us, but he is a good podcast.
It's another podcast to tune in.
Another podcast. Yeah. Another one. That's a good way of putting it, Schmitty. And Josh is a guy that he is not one of those guys in the national media that throws Nebraska's name around to get clicks from Nebraska fans. Among the national media, I think he's probably one of the guys that talks about Nebraska the least. He cares about the teams that really are relevant to the national scene of college football.
Who's a playoff contender.
That's what he's going to be talking about. And really, he's a guy that's from the South. He spends a lot of his time talking about the SEC. I'm not to say he hasn't talked about Nebraska ever in his career as a podcast host, but it's not what he makes his bread and butter on, getting clicks from the Husker fans. For him to say that, and he got a one-on-one sit-down with Matt Rhule last week at Big Ten Media Days, for him to go out and say that, I mean, I know Brian Kelly's a guy that Josh Pate respects tremendously, and from that, I mean, he hasn't talked all that much about Matt Rhule this offseason since the hire. For him to go make that comparison, Josh is one of the guys who's measured in college football and doesn't throw that kind of stuff around willy-nilly. That's a big comparison to be made, but I can see where he's coming from. Just in terms of Brian Kelly, he's usually put together in front of the media. Whenever he shows up at a news stop, you know what? He's going to try to be one of the people.
Accent and all.
Yeah. My family. Who could forget that?
I mean, do declare.
I mean, I see the comparison that he's making, and obviously the results on the field are the most important part of that comparison. That's what we haven't yet seen. But it's a reasonable comparison to be made to say, you know what? You're a team that's north of the Mason-Dixon line that can put together consistent success every single year, and you have the head coach in place that can do it.
So you have Husker David weighing in. I'm not 100%, but I believe the experience and the extra time and work on fundamentals will be the best in the long run. And it kind of goes in reference to Judd weighing in on Teddy P. And that is an interesting discussion point. There's been some clamoring for the offensive line. We heard from Turner Corcoran earlier today. And you have, and it's fair just because of the injury situation with Teddy P. Is he the guy to make it happen at left tackle? You've got Gatula. You know the Gatula as well. We've covered Southeast for a lot of years here. And Gatula's come in at a really high level and is somebody that you don't want to see forced into action before he's ready. But he's a guy you can feel absolutely really good about with development and some seasoning. Elijah, I am interested is all get out about the offensive tackle spot, because right now Turner didn't tell us what tackle spot he was working at, but he kind of begrudgingly said, yeah, I'm working at tackle, not guard, because you're kind of loaded up at guard.
I think you know who the guards are going to be this year.
You got Piper and Newelly.
There was some doubt in my mind about Piper until he's a representative at Big Ten Media Days. That says something from the coaching staff about the confidence that they have in a guy in Ethan Piper. We knew Nuri. We saw him 2 years ago. He's a guy that I have a lot of trust in and his ability to play that left guard spot. It was the right guard spot that I was unsure about, because the question was, well, if Nuri has to move over to the right side, that leaves the left guard spot open. Is that Turner spot now at left guard? But at left tackle, it seems like you're going to have a position battle between Teddy Prohaska and Turner Corcoran to be that guy. And then elsewhere on the offensive line, I think you kind of know down the line who is going to be where. Because you have Nuri, who has experience at left guard, has been there before. He's coming back now after another year under his belt, as we said here, to get some more work done in the offseason, get some more polish on his game. Ben Scott, the transfer, coming in at center. At right guard, well, you sent Ethan Piper to Big Ten Media. I think that means you expect him to be a contributor this year. And then at right tackle, probably Ben Hart.
See, what I like is, assuming things hold true, where you've got a healthy Teddy and a Teddy that stays healthy on that left side. You have Turner that can swing because he's played both spots. Or if Ben Hart just doesn't get it done, and I know he's worked his butt off and he's got some preseason all Big Ten projection, so the frame is there. The talent is there as the number one player in Minnesota. You get him in that recruiting win. You need a third tackle. I think back to what Nebraska had, where you had Searles and Qualley, and who else was the third tackle they had? They had three guys they rotated in. Was it A-Rod or was he a guard? Help me out here.
Rodriguez was a guard. Should I just pull up the roster for you?
You're fine. You had another kid out of Hastings, I think, that was Stirrup, right?
Oh yeah, Zach Stirrup. Yes,
yeah.
sir.
So you had those three guys, and guys anchoring down. No, I think Ted. What I didn't see moving forward was like the last great Nebraska win, and that was the 56-7 blowout of Northwestern. Mm-hmm. Okay, and what you had briefly was Teddy and Turner on that left side. You had Turner at guard, you had Teddy at left tackle, and wow, I think you're good with Ben Scott at center, clearly. And the Nebraska's job right now is to keep developing a guy in Turner Corcoran to be ready. Left, right, win the job, be a guy that gets in and contributes if they rotate in, and you just don't know. You need a guy like Turner to be ready to either win the job outright at left or right, or come in if the injury bug bites again. It's not really bit Ben Hart, but it has bitten Teddy, and you're sick for him because there's all sorts of talent in that body for him, and just the mentality these guys have moving forward with a second year under Raiola, where they are going to fire off the ball. It's not going to be a situation where they're hung out to dry and they're one-dimensional theoretically. They don't want to be on offense. Nebraska's best and most useful play was finding Palmer deep, right? Well, new offense, new quarterback that's at 230 in Sims that's got to be durable himself. So, yeah, big question marks. You've got Scott that is come in, and he's like one of the old guard, and then you've got some good options. You still have Lutoski at a guard spot. You still have some of those options. So it seems like you got three folks for the spots aside from center with Scott.
Well, and I feel like there's a great way to take pressure off of your offensive tackles, and that's be damn good at running the football. If you're damn good at running the football, you know what that edge rusher is going to do on 3rd and 3? He's got to play his run keys. He's not going to be pinning his ears back on 3rd and long and trying to come around that corner and beat you.
You're saying down in distance is important?
100%. As a former offensive tackle, not at a very high level, but as a former offensive tackle, I can say, man, you know what sucks? 3rd and 14, whenever that edge rusher gets to go line up 10 yards outside of you, pin his ears back and use the athleticism. I'm fat, man. I'm not going to be able to get there.
I'm going to try and make my way outside with that kick step and just pray that I don't get nailed for holding.
Or worse yet, the defense can say, we're not too worried about the run. We can bring in our skinny, fast guy to come around the edge because he doesn't have to go play his run keys. He can just go beat you with speed around the outside. What a defense can do based on down and distance can really hamper you in your offensive line. When you think back to Nebraska's offensive line last year, if it was anything greater than 2nd and 7, they're going to throw the football. And if they throw the football on 2nd and 7, if it's not a first down, they're going to be throwing the football again. Defenses were able to pin their ears back against that Nebraska offensive line. So you want to take some pressure off the guys that have struggled in recent years, and Corcoran and Ben Hart. And maybe, God forbid, you'd prefer it if it didn't happen, but if you have to throw a guy like Gunnar Gatula into the fire, you'd prefer it if he's not going up against the who's who edge rushers in the Big Ten that just get to pin their ears back. And if there is any consolation in this, Nebraska avoids the top edge rushers in the conference this year for the most part. You have to face the Stewart guy out of Michigan. Mm-hmm. He was preseason all Big Ten. And then there's a kid out of Illinois as well whose name escapes
Illinois has
me.
got some dudes that Levy's loaded up. And you've had the last 2 years, Elijah, of top 15 defenses and 1st through 3rd round picks. That Maffei guy from Minnesota was a pain in the neck. Mm-hmm. You had your Michigan freak shows off the edge that were no good to deal with. Ohio State's guys. Scott chimes in. You got to get the big Lutoski. I like that, not the big Lebowski, on the field. So, yeah, they're all working. I mean, you've got guys that have been a part of the program. There's been a lot of starts together. We'll see. And they'll get a test, man, because Minnesota's going to want to punish Nebraska offensively and defensively. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's going to be what that 7 o'clock kickoff's all about. Bring the ice, take the under, and try and get out of Dodge with a 21-17 win or a 14-10 or a 17-10, whatever it may be. But you got a quarterback that is going to be a difference maker on those unscripted if it does break down off the edge theoretically.
And that's another thing that takes some pressure off of your offensive line is that ability to have a quarterback that can scramble, or you know what? He can pull the ball on 1st and 10, and you lose a defender that way. You're going around the corner and you pick up 8 yards. There's ways to take the pressure off your offensive line, and Nebraska didn't utilize any of them last year. So that should be noted when we have this conversation about the improvement of the offensive line.
Get to some emails here. Can email Chris at HaleVarsity.com. Can dial up 489-1240, 489-1240, or 800-825-5865. Can join the show that way. More of your comments coming in on the stream. Who's on the horn?
We go to Pete on the line.
Pete, thanks for calling. Welcome into Hale Varsity. Go ahead.
How you doing today?
We're good, man. Excited that day one of camp is behind us.
One of the questions I have on offense, the offensive line, do you know if they're going to be a zone blocking team or are they going to be a assigned blocking team this year?
We will ask Coach Raiola when he's there, but I think
the plan was they're firing off the football, not zone block, and they're going straight assignment, being more of a power football team. That was the plan. Now, it should always be noted that anything before game one of your first season in charge, you know what? Some of that stuff can be stuff you're telling the media, but I tend to believe, based on what we saw in the spring game and based on Coach Railow's history, that they're going to be firing off the ball. They're going to be playing more of a power scheme.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, in my opinion, I think this year's success is going to depend upon injuries in a large part, and the second part will be how much does the players buy in to the new system. If they buy in and work really hard, we could have a pretty good year. But I think a lot of it's going to depend on that.
Well, and that's what's so key about that opener against Minnesota, Colorado. What's your record look like as you get towards Michigan? Do you stumble? Tough draw. Pete, thanks for the phone call. Tough reality with having to open up for a third straight year on the road against a Big Ten West team. You had Bielema's debut for Illinois. You had the Ireland roadie where the Guinness was incredible. That was it. And then you open up this year with Minnesota. Yeah, injury is going to be key, but can you get to the end of September at 3-1? 2-2 would hurt, but it's better than what the alternative has been. I mean, they've had some really tough September starts, even against some of the, all right, we'll pay you $1 million and come on in here for the old W. And that wasn't always the case when you look at Georgia Southern.
And I guess I understand Pete's point about injuries, but you also have to understand that in a football season, injuries are going to happen. Whenever you look around the Big Ten and some of Nebraska's opponents in recent years, it's about execution. And there's that next man up mentality that so many other teams we've seen it from that we haven't quite seen it from Nebraska. I mean, you mentioned that Brett Bielema opener. It's Arthur Sitkowski leading Illinois up and down the field, the backup quarterback that we didn't talk about all week long.
No.
But they went next man up, and he was able to go out there and execute the offense. I mean, look at Donovan Edwards last year against Ohio State. Blake Corum goes down, and he's able to go up there and fill his shoes because he's able to execute and do the things that they had practiced all week long. And sure, there's a piece of that of having some depth and being able to build that through years, but it's also about practicing the right way and being confident in your two deep that, you know what, if a starter goes down, we have a guy that he might not be as good, but we're still confident in him to execute. I don't think Nebraska's had that in the past couple of years.
Bielema was smart enough to say, we're going to lean on the offensive line. We're going to lean on Brown. We're going to find the tight end. We're going to make the throws easy. Art, don't turn the damn football over. Art Sitkowski beat you.
The name that will live on forever in my memory. Because I remember watching that game being like, we didn't talk about this dude once. I don't know anything about Art Sitkowski.
We didn't know if Art was going to be able to handle the snap. He was. He handed off and he hit some play action.
That Illinois offense looked like the best in the country for about a quarter and a half.
Yeah, and then the old strip sack. Take a drink. Hit your bingo card. We'll get some thoughts from Jay Moore. We'll try and run Coach McBride down tomorrow. Hail Varsity continues on a Monday, and we're presented by Currency.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. The Black Shirt Hour continues. Jay Moore with us on Hail Varsity Radio at JMoore44. It's where you find him on Twitter. You catch him on Big Red Wrap-Up, co-hosting that. Jay, camp is here. I know you got a little grin to you about that. How are you?
I'm well. How are you guys?
We're good, man. Back from Indy, back from Media Days, the unofficial kickoff to the season, and things have slid just into camp, and a new chapter, man, with Coach Rhule and his expectations, and above all, detail. That's what sticks out to me about Coach Rhule. We'll get into a lot of things. I want to start off, though, and get your reaction about Miles Farmer, 11-game starter last year. He kind of had a nose for the football early in his career with interceptions and enforcing turnovers, a guy that's played a lot of ball in that back area.
Yeah, not the news you wanted to hear going into the start of fall camp. I think there's him and a handful of other guys are either dealing with issues or disciplinary issues, but it's pretty black and white so far with Coach Rhule. And to my understanding, is this is what expected of you. If you don't hit these expectations, you're out. I think you clearly saw that with Coach Wager last week, and then seeing him leave. I think you've seen it so far with guys going into fall camp. We saw multiple guys come into fall camp suspended. It is very black and white. There's no gray area. You're in and you're doing the right things. You're doing the necessary things to be a part of this team and to make this team better. And if you're not going to be a part of it. And whether that's for a certain amount of time, kicked off permanently, but obviously the door is open as well, because you saw Anthony Grant kind of start off spring ball this last just a few months ago. I think he missed maybe a couple practices, but then he's back on because he got his school issues cleaned up. So I have no problem with it. You'd like to see guys who have contributed and who would probably start against Minnesota here in a few weeks be a part of camp day one. But listen, they cannot. These are the necessary things you have to do to clean things up. If we're talking about accountability, if we're talking about doing your job correctly, if we're talking about the fine, small details that have honestly cost this football program 20. I mean, what's the record, Schmidt, in what 7-25 in one-score games in the last handful of years?
We've tried to black that out, like Will Ferrell doing the debate scene in Old School.
Yes. Yeah,
we've tried to black that out, but yes, I think you're onto something. But
taking care of the fine details, this is what turns that 7-20 whatever record into 18-7, whatever it is. That's the fine detail. And you have to, when it comes to this level of football, the fine details matter. This isn't high school anymore. You can't get by on your athletic ability anymore. You have to do everything right. And that starts from your academics. That starts from taking care of your body. That starts from being on time. That starts from the X's and O's and being a good teammate. So like I said, they have to do the necessary things, because the football program has not met expectations that have been set and have been part of this state for decades, right? Mm-hmm. So, and he hit the nail on the head last week at Indy. We have to earn people's respect again. This program was feared at one time, and it's not anymore. And to get back to that, everyone has to be on the same page. If you're not, you're going to suffer the consequences. And it's pretty plain and simple.
It's Jay Moore with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Jay, from a football sense, what is Nebraska losing in Miles Farmer? Should he not return to this football team, or should he have a delayed absence from the team? He's a guy who started 11 games at safety, and he's been on the field a ton during his Husker football career. From a defensive point of view, having that kind of guy at the back end is valuable to have. What do you think Nebraska is losing from a football sense with Miles Farmer suspended?
Simply, he's a really good football player. He's played early and often in his career. He's made some, good plays. I vaguely remember, I think it was the COVID year, the first game maybe against Northwestern. He made a couple nice splash plays in there as a young player. You can't replace guys who have played. I always say live bullet action, right? Mm-hmm. You can't. You can simulate all you want in practice, but until you actually do it in a game against another colored jersey, another opponent, it's just different. And he has that experience to play back there in the second level, to play special teams, and to do it very, very well against an opposing team. And he knows what it takes to get it done. So it's a hit. I think arguably the secondary might be one of the deepest spots on this team. So hopefully we don't, if he's not able to come back, if there is some sort of delay, it's not felt too deeply into the secondary of this defense. But it's going to take it's going to take some recovery to get used to, because he's a good player. You can step back there. He is long, he's rangy, he is athletic, he has a body type that you just don't see, and that he has an NFL type body back there to play in the secondary. Those guys are getting drafted in the first 3 rounds. Long, lean, athletic, can run, has good ball skills. You see those guys going all the time. His built is more of like a Sauce Gardner, just long and athletic, and I know he's played more at the safety role, not the corner like Sauce does, but again, that's just the type of body type that you see at the next level, that you just can't go out there and just grab another guy and say, hey, you look like Miles Farmer, let's go in there and do his job. It's just not that easy. So it's going to be felt if he's not able to come back anytime soon. And they'll have to develop some guys here in training camp to step up and carry that load.
Jay Moore's joining us at Hail Varsity Radio. Nick Henrich spoke today after practice. He's been through the adversity, had to battle back from a pretty rough knee injury, and he's one of those guys that have seen a lot of football, part of those tight ball games that have gone the other way. What do you think about Nick this season and his upside here? What can he do? What's his best football look like?
Man, he's just a gritty guy, just a grinder. He doesn't do anything super flashy. I mean, he's your stereotypical white linebacker, right? He's your high motor, high energy, smart football player. He's just, that's what it is, and it's because that's what I was. I laugh because that's what you get labeled as, and
always got a great motor, that damn Jay Moore.
You're correct, right? And he's just a smart, and again, he's played a ton of good football, and that's what you got to have. And I know this team is rather young from top to bottom, but he's a guy that you can rely on, an older player you can rely on to help bring along some of these younger players to help communicate a new system and be Tony White's kind of second-hand man out there to communicate the new 3-3-5 defense to all these younger or less guys who haven't played as much. Mm-hmm. So happy that he is healthy. I'm glad he's in the right mental state, because a lot of times if guys haven't experienced injuries, which I know he has, they have a hard time bouncing back from them. I know he's had some shoulder issues in the past as well, so I know he's bounced back from those. So just a high character guy, a guy you can really rely on, play it day in and day out. He's consistent, and that's what you want. And that's consistency is a great thing to have, especially in a program that's had a lot, I don't want to say turmoil, but some change and just hasn't been what it needs to be. Nebraska needs to become a more consistent program, and it starts by doing the consistent things day in and day out. And Nick Henrich does that. He exemplifies that, and I'm excited to see him grow in this scheme and really play and communicate. And everybody has to kind of catch up and play at that same level that Nick plays at. So that's a good trait to have.
Jay Moore is with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. And Jay, I'll get your thoughts on one more comment that we got in from Rhule today. You said practice done today in just under an hour and 45 minutes. What's your reaction to that? We were just talking last week about the grind of fall camp, and I think we can expect that those practice times will start moving up as the players get acclimated and ready to go. But day 1, hour 45 minutes. If you were at Nebraska, what would that do to you and to the team being out of there in under 2 hours?
Yeah, that's rather short. I'm somewhat surprised. I wonder if that includes, walkthroughs or not. Is that total on the field time, or is that walkthroughs and then they go into stretch, warm up, and then it's hour? I don't know, but still, it's a very short time. Like I think I joked on here, and I wasn't joking. It was a true story. With Callahan, if you had the days with one practice, you're on the field for over 3 hours. There was no chance that you were getting off there in 2 hours and 45 minutes, let alone an hour and 45 minutes. But it's, again, you're kind of starting this process of what I think coaches can kind of, especially new coaches, you can kind of fall in that trap of trying to get so much accomplished. But if they've done a good job through spring ball installing, throughout the summer installing, there's no reason you need to be out there for 3 hours doing things. Let's get on the field. Let's be efficient. Let's take care of what we need to take care of. Let's really, keep the guys healthy keep them refreshed. There's going to be times where we're going to be out there longer. They're going to have scrimmages. They're going to do all sorts of things, live game simulations, getting ready for Minnesota. But it's day one. You don't. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. They just step foot on. And we always said the first day of fall camp's the greatest you're ever going to feel. So you're starting tomorrow. You're never going to feel as good as you felt at the beginning of practice today. So it's just a grind. And I think he understands that. I know he preaches the recovery aspect. I think that's very important to him. And if that's important, you better implement it and preach it and be a man of your word. So I have no problem with it. I'm a little jealous. I'm very jealous. Those hour and 45-minute practice, those are nice. Those are a good thing to have. And that's you realize that as a player as well. Your coach is taking care of you. You want to take care of him too.
So what's the right amount here? What's the prescription, Jay, between getting your team absolutely physically ready and you beat the hell out of one another enough to be good Thursday night against Minnesota so you're not limping into that or overexhausted, wore out before you even hit the ground running with those two road games, Minnesota and Colorado, let alone what November holds for Nebraska in the Big Ten? Is there a right prescription?
I don't think there is, but your first day of camp and again tomorrow with no pads, there's only so much you can do.
Sure.
There's only so many things it's more install. You're getting used to where you're supposed to be at during practice. Just kind of knocking some of that rust off, getting your eyes back to keying on the right things from an offensive or defensive standpoint. But again, there's, like I said, it'll be probably the same amount. And then I think they can put the half pads on the third practice. And I think practice, I think they have to do that for 3 straight days. And I think practice 6, they can have full pads, I believe, or maybe it's practice 5. I know things have been tweaked quite a bit here and there, but you don't need to be out there killing each other for 3 hours in pads. They'll have some scrimmages. I think you can get, in this day and age, you can get your work done in 2 hours or 2.5 hours and be very, very efficient at it. You just got to have a clear mindset of what you want to get accomplished, and they do. They have their practice scripts. They have whatever they want to get attacked during that practice, and then if you need to change and adjust as you go, or maybe during the practice, hey, I don't know how this went. We're going to restart this, or we're going to do this tomorrow because this obviously didn't went well the practice before. That's going to happen. That's always going to happen. But if you're trying to establish a physical football team, which I know he wants, you're going to have some 9-on-7 periods, heavy 9-on-7 periods that's run. You're going to have a lot of good-on-good, 1s-on-1s, 2s-on-2s, 1s-on-2s, 2s-on-1s type of scenarios. And again, you're going to have to get some of those younger guys reps. I think he said in the press conference after practice that, the freshman young guys got 40 reps today. That's awesome to hear. That's a thing that in years past, I don't know if that was addressed, if that was approached, but I know in his conversation with Tom that, that's what they took pride in is back in, the 4-station days of the 90s, was their younger guys got a ton of reps. They got just as many as the starters almost during practice, during camp. So I think it's always ever evolving, but I tell you what, you just got to understand who you are and what you want to be going into Minnesota. And you just got to stick to that process. And once the hay's in the barn, right? You can't ask for another day. You can't ask for another week to prepare. You can only prepare with what you got in front of you. And that started today. And it's a long process for these kids. And I'm excited to see them go through it through these next couple weeks until August 31st.
Jay Moore is with us here at Hail Varsity Radio, and you can find Jay on Twitter at JMoore44. And Jay, let's shift gears here briefly and talk about some comments in from Billy Kemp earlier today. He said, with the weapons that Nebraska has offensively and with the coaching staff that Nebraska has assembled, he thinks Nebraska has the potential to be one of the best offenses in the country. And I'll get your reaction to him saying that on day one of fall camp. Is that encouraging to you, or do you think that's a guy saying a little bit too much on day one and maybe making promises that could be hard to keep?
It might be hard to keep. I like it. I like the confidence. I like that's the new guy kind of coming in, and I know he spoke to the media before and during spring ball, but kind of the new guy that transfers from Illinois. He came from
Virginia.
Virginia. There we go. Kind of similar colors. For some reason I was thinking Illinois. But I think there's some abilities there. I think you got to stay healthy as offensive line. I think you better be able to run the football. And then you can start attacking some of these other plans to be one of the best offenses in the Big Ten and in the country. But we've seen some good offensive football here in the past. We definitely know what that looks like. But there's a lot of question marks going into this first year to make those type of comments. What is Jeff Sims going to look like? What's his offensive line going to look like? Can we protect Jeff? Can we run the football? Can we utilize all these tight end weapons we have? Who's he going to throw to at the wide receiver position? We lost some key weapons there. So there's a lot of question marks going into this first week and into game one to start making those claims. But that's just a new guy. That's a new wide receiver. I don't have no problem with it. It's not like it's any bulletin board material. But I wouldn't go that far now. Give me these first 4 games to work through that to decipher if they're one of the best offenses in the Big Ten.
Jay, let's talk dorm life. They moved in Sunday, and it's a little Remember the Titans like, where you're rooming with somebody you don't really know, and the pairings have been offense, defense. And wanted to get your thoughts. A, do you think, and I didn't ask him this, I wanted to, I forgot to, does Matt Rhule have a lava lamp? That's kind of standard with every dorm, isn't it? I mean, my crummy dorm had a lava lamp. Did you have a dorm, and did you have a lava lamp?
I did have a dorm. I was 10th floor of Harper my freshman year with, there was probably another 28 football guys on that 10th floor. And we had a blast. But I remember some of those late night fire extinguisher get pulled. You got to walk down 10 flights of stairs, in the middle of winter. And all that I don't miss those days, but the dorms are kind of fun. I think I moved out a little early. I got a little tired of them. Got an apartment, but I think it's fun. I love the fact that they're doing it. Those beds, I saw the cribs impersonation that they did on social media, and those beds do not, there's no way. I mean, I heard Ty Robinson talk about it, like he's 320 and 6'5". Like that has to be so uncomfortable for him.
Feet are hanging off the edge.
A couple weeks. Yeah. And but I get it. They're trying to build, kind of the camaraderie, build the team chemistry, which is very, very important. And he's trying to switch things up because obviously what was working, or not, I would say working, what was being done the last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years was not working. So you got to do something different. We never went to dorms when I was at Nebraska. We were able to go back to our apartments or townhomes or duplexes, whatever guys lived in. And you just drove to practice every morning, got taped, went to practice, got treatment, got cleaned up, went back to your apartment, took a nap, came back, meetings, practice, get cleaned up again, dinner, meetings, you go home. And then, you're falling asleep at 9:30, 10 o'clock, and it feels like you've been asleep for 5 seconds, and it's 6:30, you got to go back to the stadium again. So, but it's cool. It's something different. The coaches are in there too. They're living it as well, which I think is really, really cool too, because they could say, hey, see ya, we're going to go back to our cushy apartments or townhome, whatever, or houses that we just moved into and enjoy it. But it's just as important to have the team camaraderie with the players as it with the coaches. So I love that aspect of it, and we'll see if it pays off. Because it's a fun idea, and it's nothing new. I mean, teams have been doing this for many, many years.
Jay, should there be any rap songs recorded on the 7th floor, a la Greg Olson and the Miami football team?
There's gonna be some. I gotta imagine there'll be TikToks, whatever they're doing, being sent from whatever. Those were not the dorm rooms I stayed in. I think they're
No
like
kidding.
Selleck or something like that. Those I think they're at Selleck. I'm pretty sure that's where all the smart kids stayed. I had no business to stop stepping into those dorm rooms when I was in college. I know that for sure.
Were you a Selleck kid?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I didn't stay in the dorms.
Okay.
No,
But you could have. You could have qualified for Selleck.
I could have, but then I had my dad tell the university that I was living with him off campus. Wasn't true. I was living in a house.
Okay.
Having a grand old time.
There, yeah. Elijah's house setup's pretty sweet. I walk in, there's a 70-inch, and we're watching Bud Crawford. It's pretty good. Jay, before we let you go, a thought here with the report from Athlon per Barstool about the Big Ten expanding potentially this week. We've felt like Oregon, Washington could make sense at a reduced rate, but then you hear Florida State and Clemson. How's that grab you?
Yeah, you've always, obviously with getting USC, UCLA, you thought, okay, who else in the Pac-12 are you going to pull from? Because the Pac-12, their days are numbered. Mm-hmm. This thing is, they're toast. So it makes sense. Oregon, Washington, you'd think Stanford would make sense. You kind of go Stanford, Cal type of deal would make sense. And then you just assume that the Big 12 would go pull from, the Arizonas, Arizona States, the Washington States, Utahs, because that, with Colorado now coming back over, it just all that would make sense. But very, very interesting with that potential news with Clemson and Florida State coming over. It's just not, the top. Obviously it's coast to coast, but it's kind of from the Mason-Dixon line up, essentially talking geographically, but you're starting to creep below there and you're getting the SEC territory and ACC territory, but that's just what the college game is going to become. It's becoming an NFL type of product. I still see I'll be interested to see as time goes on if conferences will still exist or do you just eventually split all of them up just like regionally, kind of like the NFL does. Obviously, there's going to have more than 32 teams. You're going to have 60-some teams potentially that you're working with. But I just foresee that going forward, just especially with the TV money. You're just going to land these huge multi-billion-dollar deals with the CBXs, the Foxes, the ESPNs, the NBC, just like the NFL does. And schools are going to want that, man. They're going to want, instead of getting, $40, $50, $60 million a year from the Big Ten or ACC network or SEC network, they're getting the hundreds of $1 million, a year from these TV contracts. So not surprised, because I just think college football is already a vast national product. It's just going to be even more of that without conferences. I just foresee that coming someday. I don't know if it's going to happen in the next 10 years, but I just think it's inevitable. It's going to happen someday, and we're just starting to see it kind of piece together, year by year. Well,
you get Florida State and you grab Clemson. They've been screaming about, all right, we're not getting paid what we're worth. We've been carrying the flag for the ACC. That could also put some pressure on Notre Dame, because Notre Dame sticks in the ACC. Well, part of their path to the playoff has always been they've been able to take down Florida State or Clemson with a quality win, and if that's not there, that's problematic. Bird, will get you run down next week. Thanks again for a few minutes today.
Yep, you got it, boys. Always a pleasure.
Love checking in with Jay Moore. Good to spend time with him. We'll try and run down Coach McBride tomorrow, see if we can move him to Tuesday. And Mitch Sherman will join us from The Athletic. Reminder, you want to get caught up on the show, or the segments you want to hear, or the entire show. It's podcast for you with Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and catch the video. Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Can rewatch on the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed. And more with camp coverage in Nebraska. Coach White tomorrow. So have that for you. Thanks for tuning in. Good to spend time. Hail Varsity back tomorrow at 4, presented by Currency.